All right, ladies and gentlemen, today we are just going to extend what we were doing last week, working with our rational numbers. Remember, that's just a great way of talking about fractions. On your quiz, you were focusing on adding and subtracting rational numbers, but it was essentially in the form of still addition sign. And if you remember here, we're going to focus on the problems that have the subtraction sign, and then we'll probably have to go ahead and do adding the opposite. So I will be able to subtract rational numbers. So now remember, with your addition rule, yeah, you got your nice addition sign here, but 5 plus 2 is 7, so when they are the same signs, we're going to go ahead and add them and keep the sign. But when they're different signs, like right here, we're going to go ahead and subtract them and take the sign from the greatest absolute value. Over here on our subtraction problems, 5 subtract 3, now that's just a basic elementary, but we could do adding the opposite, which would be 5 plus negative 3. On this one right here, it would be negative 7 adding positive 4, because again, it's called adding the opposite. This is a great example here. 5 subtract negative 10, which will really become 5 adding positive 10. 5 plus 10 is 15. So the majority of our problems today, again, are going to be dealing with those subtraction signs, but we will be doing adding the opposite to make it just a little bit easier for us. Once you've done adding the opposite, then it really just becomes an addition problem here. So if you notice, it says subtract negative 6 over 7. So you got your mixed number, subtract negative 6 over 7. So adding the opposite will give me, well, let's change it, I guess, to an improper fraction, just like you did on your quiz. 7 times 4 is 28, add 1 is 29, keep the negative sign. All right, there's the adding the opposite, so it's plus 6 over 7. Now the great news is, again, that we have the same denominators, so I don't have to change anything there. So I'm really just going to go ahead and use my integer rules for my numerators. Negative 29 plus 6 is going to give me, well, different signs. Subtract gives me 23. Take the negative sign, because it has the greatest absolute value, which is going to be negative 23 plus 6. I've got negative 23, over 7. That's our 8th grade answer, but we're going to go ahead and focus on our 7th grade answer, which is going to be our mixed number. So we know that 7 times 3 is 21, so it's going to be negative 3. Well, I guess you could just do your basic division, but I think a bunch of you can do it in your head. 7 times 3 is 21. Subtract it, and we get a 2 over 7. So negative 3 and 2 over 7. What I need you to do now is to go ahead and continue with me for example 2. So if you notice, don't have the same denominator, so that means I cannot add or subtract. I will have to change that. So I got a few things I need to do initially. First of all, I need to change it from a mixed number to improper fraction. And then right here again, I'm going to change that to addition sign and then the opposite. So it would look like this. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 1 is 10, so negative 10 over 3. Again, I personally like having the negative sign up by the 10, and then adding the opposite. So move the negative sign up to the 5. I think that'd be good. All right, let's go ahead and make a common denominator. We know that a 3 can change into a 6, so the LCD is going to be a 6. We're just going to go ahead and multiply by 2. And same thing at the numerator. So I really have negative 20 over 6, adding negative 5 over 6, which is going to give me negative 25 over 6. Now, if I need to, I can go ahead and do my division, but I think a bunch of you might just know this in your head. Let's change it to the 7th grade answer. How many times does 6 go into 25? Well, 6 times 4 is 24. Really close, right? So we've got negative 4 and 1 over 6. Now, if you didn't know to do the division in your head, you could just go off and do it elementary style like it shows on the screen there. But again, we've got a lot of practice here, changing it from improper fraction to mixed number answer. All right, let me give you a moment to go ahead and think about this one. Okay, you should know the LCD just looking at it. We're going to change them to improper fractions. 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1, 9, so 9 over 2. Adding the opposite. 4 times 5 is 20, plus 1 is 21. LCD is 4, so it means the first fraction needs to change. Multiplying by 2. So again, it's just an extension of what we've already done. We're just practicing again adding the opposite. So I've got 18 adding negative 21. Really, subtracting and taking the sign from the greatest absolute value. So we can confirm it's going to be negative 3 over 4. That is a proper fraction answer, so I don't have to change it. It's not an improper fraction, so I cannot make a mixed number out of it. My only suggestion, again, is having the negative sign on the top. Hey, our decimal problems, again, perform the exact same way. Let's go ahead and do adding the opposite. In doing so, I realize, hey, I'm just going to add them and keep the sign. So 81.4 plus 6.7, line it up. Remember, addition of decimals, line them up. Keep the negative sign though, remember, because that rule still applies. Negative 88.1. Okay, adding the opposite in the middle. The middle part becomes addition. The negative 20.5 becomes positive. Okay, this one, as it says there, different sign. So one is positive, one. Wait a minute. You should just look at it and see. Silly answer. That was nice and neat. But yeah, remember, if they are different signs, you're really going to subtract. Find the difference. That means subtract. Then you take the sign from the greatest absolute value. But again, 0 is neutral, so it's not positive or negative. It's just 0. Okay, adding the opposite. Both positive, but again, here is just really elementary skill, lining up your decimals to do your addition. You can put an additional 0. Don't say add a 0. You can write an additional 0 after the 1. So it'd be 0.410. Add them up, and obviously it stays positive. Remember, I already said the 0 in the front is important. You must have that 0 before the decimal. If you forget it, you're going to lose some points there. Just basic skills. Got to write it correctly. 0.486. All right, this is the one that we've been working on. Hey, the funny bunny maybe? Let's see. It says, find the distance between the two numbers on the number line. So how many spaces would that funny bunny have to move if he starts at negative 3 1/4 and has to move to 2 3/4? So if you notice, that's a pretty significant distance if you were to just kind of count the little spaces. But since we're dealing with our fractions, we need to be a little bit more careful. So we're really talking about the difference. The difference, again, is referring to subtraction. Once we've done that, we remember that distance is a positive thought, so we will take the absolute value. I like to think about it as moving from the left to the right. But the way that I set it up again has to be like this. Negative 3 1/4, subtract 2 3/4. Absolute value. Adding the opposite. Hey, if you notice, they already have the same denominator, so that's excellent. So let's just go ahead and write them as improper fractions. 4 times 3 is 12, plus 1 is 13. So we got negative 13 over 4. Add to that negative, and then 4 times 2 is 8. Add 3 is 11. Absolute value, don't forget about that. So I got same signs, negative 13 plus negative 11. I can add them up, stays negative, which is going to give me a negative 24 over 4. Absolute value, though. Remember, the distance is a positive thought. And we know that negative 24 divided by 4 is negative 6. The absolute value of negative 6 is 6. So that would be the movement, or the distance would be 6 spaces there. Because again, distance is a positive thought. It's all about getting common denominators and obviously adding or subtracting. Today we also practice using adding the opposite. All right, same idea, but we got decimals this time. The nice thing about decimals is you don't need a common denominator. You just have to line up your decimals when you're adding or subtracting. So again, imagine your number line, negative 7.5, and then you're going to move to negative 15.3. So I'm going to go ahead and, ooh, look at that setup there. The difference is subtraction and negative 15.3. So adding the opposite. Different signs now. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract. Don't say 3 subtract 5 is a 2. You're going to have to borrow or regroup. Decimal points line up. 14 subtract 7 is 7. So I still have my absolute value bars. But we know the absolute value of 7.8 is still just 7.8. Because again, absolute value is talking about the distance. Distance is a positive thought there. Again, if it felt like it went a little quick, that's okay. You could always pause the video, back it up. You can ask questions during class on the chat or even unmute. All right, you have your notes. You're going to go ahead and be awesome working on your book assignment. All right, be great.